You ever have that moment where you're watching a movie and you're completely locked in, heart racing, brain firing on all cylinders, but then, right when it should hit its highest note, something just feels off? Like it's still good, but there's this one choice, this one piece of the puzzle that keeps you from loving it as much as you want to. That was me with Weapons. And honestly, it was déjà vu. Because Cregger already did this to me once before with Barbarian. And now, we need to talk about it. So here's the deal. Cregger is one of those directors who knows how to get under your skin. He knows how to make you feel like you're safe, and then pull the rug out from under you so hard you hit the floor before you even realize you're falling. Barbarian was proof of that. Remember how it starts? Keith, the awkward Airbnb double booking, the slow building distrust, and then boom, you're in a nightmare of underground tunnels, pitch black corridors, and something moving in the shadows. It was terrifying because it didn't play by the normal rules. You thought you were watching one kind of movie, and then the walls literally opened up into something completely different. And the reveal, well, if you've seen it, you know. That monster, the mother, this huge, pale, deformed, feral woman with insane strength, lurking in the dark, treating our main character like a baby. On paper, that's wild. In practice, it's disturbing as hell. But here's the thing, the mother wasn't a demon or a creature from another world. She was human. Human, but broken. Victim of years of abuse, locked away, born into a nightmare that never ended. She was a product of Frank, this old, evil man who spent decades kidnapping women, assaulting them, forcing children into existence, keeping them in this twisted underground hell. And in the end, the mother is both the villain and the victim. You feel a bit of sympathy for her, but you're also meant to be terrified and disgusted by her. That's where the problem starts. Because Cregger made her look like a monster, not just because of her backstory or her actions, but because of her body. Because she was big, deformed, aged in a way that stripped away every conventional beauty marker our culture celebrates. Sunken eyes. Rotted teeth. Sagging, stretched skin. And you're supposed to recoil. Not because she's chasing you, but because of how she looks. And that, whether intentional or not, sends a message. One that says, this kind of woman is scary. And we'll come back to that, because it's not just a Barbarian thing. Fast forward to Weapons. And let me just say, this movie is fantastic in so many ways. It's got that same layered structure. Zach loves the story told in chapters, bouncing between different characters' perspectives, always keeping you just a little off balance. We've got Justine Gandy, played by Julia Garner, walking into this eerie situation where all but one of her students have mysteriously disappeared. We've got Archer Graff, played by Josh Brolin, a dad desperate to figure out what's going on. And the way the movie peels back the mystery? Chef's kiss. Every chapter feels like a different genre: suspense, mystery, horror, and each shift makes the picture bigger, stranger, more unsettling. And then, we meet Gladys. Gladys is the big bad. The antagonist pulling strings from the shadows. She's dying, she's witchy, she's manipulative, and oh yeah, she's using a magical ritual to keep people under her control in hopes of saving her own life. She's got agency. She's got power. She's got a plan. Honestly? On paper, she's a way more interesting villain than the mother. The mother was reactive. Gladys is proactive. The mother was an accident of cruelty. Gladys is making choices. Big difference. But still, here's the déjà vu. Gladys is presented in a way that leans on the same visual cue Cregger used before. Look at this ill, old woman. Isn't she unsettling? Before we even fully understand her magic, her motives, her danger, the movie is already priming us to be thrown off by her appearance. The bad wig. The gaudy makeup. The moments in dreams where she shows up looking wrong. The shots of her sickly, hairless head that make the characters and us recoil. And yeah, she's evil in the story, so you could argue it makes sense. But when you step back and look at both movies side by side, that's two films in a row where the horror at the core is tied to the image of an older woman who's physically outside the bounds of what's considered beautiful. Now, let me break this down. Because some of you are probably thinking, it's horror, man. Horror uses scary imagery. That's the point. True. Horror is about making us uncomfortable. But the best horror, the horror that really sticks with you, doesn't just grab easy shortcuts. And I think ill-looking older woman is one of the easiest shortcuts in the book. You want the audience to feel uneasy? Make the villain elderly, frail, sickly, and unconventional in appearance. Boom. Instant creep factor. But what's that really saying? That age, illness, and lack of conventional beauty are things to fear? That's where it gets messy. Because here's the emotional side, we all get old. We all get sick at some point. Our bodies change. We lose hair, our skin changes, our features shift. And if the stories we keep telling in pop culture associate that with danger, with disgust, with villainy, what do you think that does to how we view real people who look that way? It plants this seed that says, this is other. This is not safe. And in a world already obsessed with youth and beauty, horror can unintentionally make that bias even stronger. Now, I'm not saying Zach Cregger is sitting in a chair somewhere thinking, yes, I will make people hate old women. I think he's genuinely fascinated by unconventional villains. I think he likes using imagery that you don't expect. And I respect that. But when you do it twice in a row, with such similar framing, big climax reveals, big fear moments tied to the physical appearance, it's worth talking about. Because the pattern is there. And this isn't just a Zach Cregger thing. Horror as a genre has leaned on this for decades. From the Wicked Witch of the West to the Crone and the Witch to countless ghost stories about old, twisted women lurking in the attic. It's a trope, the horror mother, the evil crone, whatever you want to call it. And tropes aren't automatically bad. They're storytelling tools. But if you don't push past the surface, if you don't find ways to subvert them or add layers, they can start reinforcing stereotypes instead of breaking them. What's interesting about Barbarian is that the mother is technically a subversion. She's violent, yes, but she's also protective in her own warped way. She's not evil because she wants power, she's dangerous because she's desperate to hold on to the only kind of connection she's ever known. There's tragedy there. You could almost flip that story and make her the main character. And in Weapons, Gladys is genuinely powerful. She's got motive, she's got supernatural skills, she's actively fighting for her survival. She's not a victim of someone else's cruelty, she's the architect of her own dark plan. But, the visual language still leans the same way. The shock moments, the camera lingering on the way they look, the way other characters react with horror before they even know the whole truth. That's the echo. That's the repetition. That's the piece that for me holds both films back from hitting true greatness. And look, I'm not here to cancel anyone. I love Barbarian. I think Weapons is one of the best horror films of the year so far. Zach Cregger is insanely talented. But I also think as fans, as people who love movies and want them to grow, we can point out when a pattern shows up and say, hey, this worked, but maybe it could work even better if you tried something else next time. That's how art evolves. That's how we get stories that scare us in new ways, not just with old tricks. And maybe you totally disagree with me. Maybe you think I'm overthinking it. That's cool, that's why we talk about this stuff. Because horror hits everybody differently. What creeps me out might not creep you out. What makes me uncomfortable might be nothing to you. But I do think it's worth asking ourselves, when we see something in a movie that gets under our skin, is it because it's truly scary, or is it because we've been trained to think it's scary? So here's my challenge to you: next time you watch a horror movie, pay attention to what makes you jump, what makes you feel uneasy. And then ask yourself, is it the idea behind it, or just the image? And if it's the image, what's that image really saying? Because if we keep telling the same kind of scary story, about the same kind of scary person, we're missing out on so many other possibilities. Horror can make anything terrifying. A smile. A shadow. A single word whispered in the dark. We don't have to lean on the easy visual of an unattractive older woman to get the job done. And Zach, if by some miracle you're watching this, man, I'm a fan. You've got the skill, the vision, the guts to go places most directors wouldn't dare. I'm just saying, next time, shock us with something we haven't seen before. Because I know you can. Now, if you made it this far, you're officially part of the conversation. And I want to hear from you. Did you notice this in Barbarian and Weapons? Did it bother you, or did it just feel like good horror to you? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I read every single one. And if you got something out of this, if it made you think, hit that like button. Share this with your horror-loving friends. And subscribe, because we're going to keep breaking down the movies that scare us, challenge us, and make us see the world differently. Because horror isn't just about fear. It's about the truth hiding under that fear. And sometimes, the scariest thing isn't the monster in the dark, it's realizing why you thought they were a monster in the first place.